Little Fox. Puss in Boots, Episode 1. A mill, a donkey, and a cat. It was a chilly morning. Some people gathered in a graveyard. The town miller had died. The miller's 3 sons stood by the grave. Their names were Francis, Batista, and Carrabbas.
"I'll miss Father,"
Francis said. Batista nodded.
I will too.
Carrabbas wiped away a tear.
I'm glad he lived a nice long life.
Later, the brothers went to the mill.
Father was quite poor.
Batista said.
He only owned this mill and a donkey.
"I'm taking the mill,"
Francis said.
You?
Batista cried.
"I'm the oldest.
Francis said.
I'll take over Father's business. And I'll make money grinding flour."
Well, I'm taking the donkey.
Batista said.
I can use it to carry goods to the market.
"Let's go into business together.
Francis said.
I'll grind flour and you take it to the market."
Batista smiled.
Perfect.
What about me?
Carrabbas asked quietly. Batista shrugged.
Father didn't own anything else.
I don't get anything?
Carrabbas asked.
That's not fair.
Francis shrugged.
"You're the youngest."
Just then, a cat pounced on a mouse.
Oh!
Batista said.
I forgot about Father's cat, Puss.
Francis grinned.
"Carrabbas, you can have Puss."
Francis and Batista laughed. Carrabbas sighed. Puss in Boots, Episode 2. Poor Carrabbas. Carrabbas was very poor. His roof had holes. His clothes had holes. Even his shoes had holes. Each morning, Carrabbas worked in his garden.
Hello, Carrabbas.
Batista walked by with his donkey. Carrabbas waved to his brother. Carrabbas checked his tomatoes. He said. Bugs were eating one tomato. Another was rotten. Suddenly, an apple rolled down from the road. Carrabbas picked it up. The apple was red and shiny. He licked his lips. Then Carrabbas spotted a man with an apple cart. He ran after the cart.
You dropped an apple.
Carrabbas said. The man thanked him.
You're very honest.
Later, Carrabbas went into town. he bought a small loaf of bread. Suddenly, he heard music. Carrabbas peeked inside a cafe. A man was playing a guitar. Carrabbas closed his eyes.
Beautiful music.
He thought. Nearby, some people were talking.
Did you hear the news?
A man asked.
An ogre came down from the hills.
The others gasped. Carrabbas gulped.
Where's the ogre now?
The man shrugged.
Nobody knows.
He said. Ogres are terrible, a woman said. I'm locking my door tonight. Carrabbas hurried home. He was going to lock his door, too. Puss in Boots, Episode 3, A Clever Cat. At home, Carrabbas locked his door. He fed Puss bits of bread.
Aw, Puss.
He said.
I wish I had more food for you.
Carrabbas ate his own dinner. It was a small bowl of soup. He dipped some bread in it. Soon, Puss went to sleep. A chilly wind blew under the door. Carrabbas put a blanket over the cat. Later, Carrabbas counted his money. That night, he tossed and turned in bed.
Soon I will need more money.
He thought.
What will I do?
The next morning, Carrabbas worked in the garden. Puss was sleeping nearby. A mouse ran past. Suddenly, the cat's paw shot out. He caught the mouse. Puss licked his lips. Carrabbas blinked in surprise.
Puss wasn't asleep.
He thought.
Puss tricked that mouse. He's a clever cat.
That afternoon, Carrabbas spotted Puss again.
What is that cat doing now?
He thought. The cat was at the garden shed. With his back feet, he hung from the doorway. Just then, a mouse ran by. Smack! Puss grabbed it. Carrabbas laughed softly.
That cat is amazing,
he said. He shook his head.
I wish Puss could catch food for me, too.
Puss in Boots, Episode 4, Another Surprise from Puss. Carrabbas was in town, buying flour and salt. The man waited as Carrabbas counted out coins. A basket of dried fish sat on the table. Carrabbas saw it and thought of Puss.
How much for the dried fish?
He asked. The man told him the price.
That's too much money.
Carrabbas thought.
Oh well.
He paid for the flour and salt and left. Carrabbas was walking home. Suddenly, he stopped.
Puss is a great cat.
Carrabbas thought.
I want to do something nice for him.
Carrabbas ran back to the store. He bought a dried fish. Carrabbas had a long walk home. One of his shoes ripped. But Carrabbas just smiled. He couldn't wait to give Puss the treat. Later, Puss ate his dried fish. The cat purred happily.
I'm glad you like it.
Carrabbas said. After dinner, Carrabbas counted his coins again. Each day, the pile grew smaller.
What will I do?
He said.
How will I eat?
Puss jumped into his master's lap. Carrabbas sighed.
You're lucky, Puss. You don't have problems.
That's not true, Master.
Puss said suddenly.
Your problems are my problems.
Carrabbas gasped.
You talked!
Puss in Boots, Episode 5. Boots for Puss!
A talking cat?
Carrabbas said.
That's amazing!
Puss waved a paw.
Talking is easy.
But how can you talk?
Carrabbas asked.
It doesn't matter.
Puss said.
I have a plan to help you.
Carrabbas stared at the cat.
Puss is a very unusual cat.
He thought.
Perhaps he really can help me.
First, I need a bag and some boots.
Puss said.
But plain boots are no good. My boots must be fancy.
Carrabbas looked at the coins on the table.
I don't have much money.
Carrabbas said.
I can't buy nice boots.
Puss smiled.
My feet are small. The boots won't cost much.
The next day, they went to the shoemaker.
I need a pair of boots.
Carrabbas said. The shoemaker looked at Carrabbas's feet. Then he told Carrabbas the price. Carrabbas gulped. Puss stepped forward.
Sir, the boots are for me.
He said. The shoemaker was shocked.
A talking cat? Amazing!
Puss shrugged.
It's not a big deal.
Puss held up a foot.
Look, my feet are quite small.
The shoemaker rubbed his chin.
I can make you a pair for a few coins.
Excellent!
Puss said.
But the boots must be fancy.
The shoemaker smiled proudly.
They'll be the fanciest boots in the kingdom.
Puss in Boots, Episode 6. Puss has a plan. Puss had his new fancy boots. He gazed in a mirror.
I look fabulous,
He said.
Those boots are nice.
Carrabbas said.
But why do you need them?
Puss smiled.
Master. I must look my best. That is how a cat gets respect.
Puss picked up a bag.
I will be back later.
He said.
Where are you going?
Carrabbas asked.
I have a plan, remember?
Puss said. Puss went outside. Carrabbas scratched his head.
Puss is special,
He thought.
but he's also very strange.
Outside, Puss got a carrot from the garden. He dropped it into the bag. Then he headed down the road. Puss came to a meadow and stopped.
This spot is perfect.
He said. He put the bag on the ground. Then he hid behind a bush and waited. Soon, a rabbit came along. It sniffed the bag. Puss grinned.
Yes, Mr. Rabbit.
He thought.
First, smell that carrot. Next, climb into the bag.
The rabbit stuck its nose in the bag. It crawled in farther. Puss pounced.
Got you.
Puss quickly tied up the bag.
Master might like this rabbit for dinner,
He said.
but I have other plans.
Puss in Boots, Episode 7. The King. The king looked in a mirror. He turned to the side and gasped.
Sal, come in here.
The king cried. A servant hurried in.
Yes, Your Majesty.
There's a hair on my robe.
The king said.
I can't reach it.
The servant picked off the hair.
Thank you.
The king said.
I'm a king. I can't have a hair on my robe.
The king glanced down.
Sal, your shoe is unbuckled.
Sal quickly buckled the shoe.
Sorry, Your Majesty.
The king walked into the throne room and sat. People were waiting to see him. A servant let in one person at a time. A woman came in first.
Your Majesty, I need a job.
She said.
I can sew.
Her hair fell in her face. The king gave the woman a job. He also gave her a hair tie. A man came in next. His pants looked too big.
My neighbors are poor.
The man said.
They are old and need food. Take some grain for your neighbors.
The king said. He turned to a servant.
Get this man a belt!
He shouted. The king frowned as the man left.
Everyone looks so messy.
He thought. The door opened again. A cat in fancy boots walked in. Puss in Boots, Episode 8, Gifts from the Duke. Puss bowed.
Greetings, Your Majesty.
The king gasped.
You talk!
Servants began to whisper. Puss shrugged.
It's no big deal.
The king looked at Puss's boots.
Excellent boots!
He said.
Very fancy.
Thank you.
Puss said.
It's important to look neat.
The king grinned.
I feel the same way.
He walked over to Puss.
You're a fine fellow. How can I help you?
I have a gift for you.
Puss said. He pulled the rabbit from the bag.
It's from my master, the Duke of Carrabbas.
Wonderful!
The king said.
Tell the Duke I said thank you.
The next day, Puss went to the forest. He placed seeds in the bag. Puss climbed up a tree and waited. Two birds landed near the bag. They pecked at the seeds. Puss leaped from a branch. He pounced on the birds and caught them. Puss returned to the castle with the birds. He bowed.
A gift from the Duke of Carrabbas.
Lovely!
The king said. The king handed a gold coin to Puss.
Please give this to the Duke.
Thank you.
Puss said.
But the Duke has everything he needs.
The king smiled warmly.
Then he can buy something he doesn't need. You must take it!
Puss in Boots, Episode 9, A Guest at the Castle. Carrabbas looked around his house.
I need money.
He thought.
Maybe I can sell something.
Just then, Puss walked in with a gold coin. Carrabbas gasped.
Where did you get that?
Puss shrugged.
The king gave it to me.
Carrabbas scratched his head.
The king?
Puss nodded.
He and I are friends.
Puss gave Carrabbas the gold coin.
Oh, Puss, thank you.
Carrabbas said. Puss laughed and nodded.
More good things will happen soon.
Puss visited the king every day. He brought a gift every day, too.
From the Duke.
He said. The king loved Puss. A singer sang for the cat. A jester juggled for him. One day, Puss and the king had lunch.
Tell me about the Duke.
The king said.
Is he kind? Is he handsome?
Puss smiled.
The Duke is honest and kind.
Is he neat?
The king asked.
Oh, yes.
Puss said.
He's rich and dresses very well.
Excellent!
The king said.
I want to meet him.
Puss gulped.
Uh-oh.
He thought.
I can't bring Carrabbas here. The king will see that he is poor.
Puss thought fast.
My master is, very busy right now. I'm sure you can meet him soon, though.
Puss in Boots, Episode 10. Beautiful music. Puss tapped his chin. The king wanted to meet Carrabbas, so Puss needed a plan. One day, Puss visited the castle. The king was taking a nap. As Puss walked around, he heard music.
Someone is playing a guitar.
Puss thought.
It's beautiful.
Puss followed the sound through the castle. He came to a doorway. Puss saw a young woman with a guitar. Her fingers danced along its strings.
Master loves music.
Puss whispered.
I wish he could hear this.
The woman looked up. Oh, she said. You must be Puss. Father told me about you. Puss was confused.
Who is your father?
He's the king, the woman said. I'm Fiona. I was traveling and came home last night. Puss bowed.
It's an honor to meet you. You're very talented, princess.
Fiona laughed. You are very kind. She stood. Come, let's walk and talk. Father and I were going to take a carriage ride, but he fell asleep. Puss and Fiona walked and talked.
She's clever and kind.
Puss thought. Soon, the king found them outside.
I'm sorry I fell asleep, Fiona.
The king said.
Let's take that carriage ride tomorrow morning.
A grin spread across the cat's face. Now, Puss had a plan. Puss in Boots, Episode 11. Nuts for Berries. Carrabbas checked his tomatoes. He heard a squawk and wings flapping. He turned around. Several birds flew off from his berry bushes. They carried berries in their beaks. Carrabbas shook his fist.
Thieves!
He shouted. Carrabbas walked back and forth.
Birds are eating my berries.
He thought.
How will I stop them?
Suddenly, Carrabbas stopped.
Puss gave me a gold coin.
He thought.
I'll use it for food and some nets. Then I can cover the berry bushes.
Later, Puss found Carrabbas in the garden. Carrabbas was placing nets over the berry bushes.
Hello, Master.
Puss said. Carrabbas patted the cat.
Master,
Puss said.
I have a plan to change your life. You're getting married.
Carrabbas shook his head and laughed.
Puss, that's a silly idea.
Puss told Carrabbas all about Fiona. He didn't say she was a princess.
Gosh,
Carrabbas said.
Fiona sounds nice. When can I meet her?
Puss looked at Carrabbas carefully. Carrabbas's pants and shirt had holes. His shoes were still falling apart.
First, we must go shopping.
Puss said.
Where is the gold coin from the king?
Carrabbas bit his lip.
I'm sorry, Puss. I spent it on food and these nets. I ruined your plan.
Puss in Boots, Episode 12, A Sneaky Plan. Carrabbas was upset. He wanted to meet Fiona, but he had no money for new clothes.
Don't worry, Master.
Puss said.
I have a new plan. Tomorrow, Fiona will take a carriage ride. She'll be with her father.
Who is Fiona's father?
Carrabbas asked. Puss didn't answer. Carrabbas tapped a foot.
Puss, who is Fiona's father?
He's, the king?
Puss said.
What?
Carrabbas cried.
I can't marry a princess.
I told the king you're a rich duke.
Puss said.
A duke?
Carrabbas gasped.
You lied?
Puss waved a paw.
It's just a little lie.
No, it's a big lie.
Carrabbas said.
And lying is wrong.
Puss sighed.
Fine. Forget about Fiona.
Carrabbas folded his arms.
I will forget her.
But Puss still had a plan. A sneaky plan.
Let's go swimming.
Puss said the next morning.
We can swim in the river.
Good idea.
Carrabbas said. Puss grinned.
I know a nice spot along the road.
Carrabbas and Puss went to the river. Carrabbas took off his ripped clothes. He dived in. Splash! The king and Fiona were riding in their carriage. Fiona played her guitar. Suddenly, she stopped. There's Puss! Puss ran toward the carriage.
Help!
He shouted.
The Duke of Carrabbas is drowning!
Puss in Boots, Episode 13. Carrabbas is saved! Carrabbas floated in the river. Rough hands suddenly grabbed him.
What's going on?
Carrabbas cried. Two men carried him out of the river.
You're safe now.
One man said.
But
Carrabbas was confused.
what?
Master!
Puss ran to him.
Thank goodness you're okay.
He winked at Carrabbas. Another man walked over. Carrabbas gulped. It was the king!
Guards!
The king said.
Right to the castle! Get dry clothes for the Duke!
The guards rode off. Soon they were back with dry clothing.
What a nice surprise!
Carrabbas put on the fine clothes.
Duke,
The king said.
it's nice to meet you.
Carrabbas bowed.
Thank you, Your Majesty. But I must tell you...
Suddenly, Carrabbas heard beautiful music.
Who is playing the guitar?
He asked. The king smiled.
That's my daughter.
What beautiful music.
Carrabbas said. The king laughed.
Yes, my daughter is very talented. Oh, what did you want to tell me?
Carrabbas said. He was still listening to the music.
What were you going to say?
The king asked. Carrabbas shook his head.
It was nothing.
The king put his hand on Carrabbas's shoulder.
Come, meet my daughter.
Puss in Boots, Episode 14. Puss sneaks away.
My dear,
The king said to Fiona.
this is the Duke of Carrabbas.
Carrabbas bowed. It is nice to meet you, Fiona said. You have a lovely cat. Carrabbas grinned.
Thank you.
The king smiled.
My daughter and I are taking a ride. Join us!
Perfect, Puss thought, sneaking away.
Puss can come too.
The king said. He looked around.
Where did he go?
Carrabbas scratched his head.
I don't know.
Carrabbas climbed into the carriage.
Fiona, your music is beautiful.
He said.
Can you play for me?
Fiona blushed. She picked up her guitar and played. Meanwhile, Puss ran far ahead of the carriage. Puss saw men cutting hay in a meadow.
Hello!
He called.
The king will be coming along soon. Tell him the Duke of Carrabbas owns this meadow.
That cat talks!
One man cried.
We won't lie to the king.
Another said. Puss showed his claws.
Yes, you will!
Yikes!
The men cried. The carriage soon passed the meadow.
Who owns this meadow?
The king asked.
The Duke of Carrabbas owns it.
One man said. The king looked at Carrabbas.
Very impressive, Duke.
Carrabbas was confused, but he stayed quiet. Puss in Boots, Episode 15, The Castle. Puss came to a cornfield.
Hey there!
Puss called to some workers. One man looked up in surprise.
Yes?
The king is coming!
Puss said.
Tell him the Duke of Carrabbas owns this cornfield.
I won't lie to the king.
The man said. Puss hissed and showed his claws.
Do as I say, or I'll eat you for dinner!
The man held up his hands.
Okay.
The carriage rolled along.
That's a magnificent cornfield.
The king said.
I wonder who owns it.
Fiona didn't hear the king. She was playing her guitar. Carrabbas didn't hear him either. He was listening to the beautiful music. The king leaned out of the carriage.
Who owns this cornfield?
He called. The king smiled when he heard the answer.
Duke!
The king said.
I didn't know you owned a cornfield.
Huh?
Carrabbas said. Puss danced as he walked along.
My plan is working perfectly!
He thought. Soon, Puss saw a castle. It was a fine castle. A farmer was working nearby.
Who owns that castle?
Puss asked.
An ogre owns it.
The farmer said.
Don't go near it.
Puss puffed out his chest.
I'm not afraid of ogres.
Puss in Boots, Episode 16, Nervous Servants.
You play the guitar so well, Fiona.
Carrabbas said.
You're an amazing musician.
Fiona laughed. I practice a lot. She handed Carrabbas the guitar. Let me hear you play. Carrabbas strummed the guitar. The king whispered in Fiona's ear.
Carrabbas would make a great husband. He's rich and owns lots of land.
Fiona shrugged. I want a husband who is kind. Puss walked up the hill. He knocked on the castle's door. A young man opened it.
Yes?
I'd like to speak with the ogre.
Puss said.
The ogre is out.
The man said.
You may come in and wait for him.
The man led Puss into a room.
Sit.
He said.
Make yourself comfortable.
The man called to a servant.
Bring us tea!
Yes, sir.
The servant hurried away. He soon came back. His hands shook as he poured the tea.
Why is the servant so nervous?
Puss thought. He looked around. Other servants stood nearby. They all looked nervous too. Puss thought.
Now I'm beginning to get nervous.
He stood up.
Thank you,
Puss said to the man.
but I need to go now. I must...
The man suddenly grew big and green. His face became ugly. Puss gasped.
You're the ogre!
Puss in Boots, Episode 17, A Game of Checkers. The ogre stood in the doorway. Puss was trapped. The ogre smiled, showing rotten teeth.
You must stay!
He said.
I rarely have visitors.
Puss sat down.
I'll escape when I get a chance.
He thought. The ogre took a board from a shelf. He sat down.
Let's play checkers!
The ogre said.
If you win, I'll let you leave.
It's a deal.
Puss said. Puss and the ogre played checkers.
When did you buy this castle?
Puss asked.
I didn't buy it.
The ogre chuckled.
I ate the last owner.
Puss gulped. The ogre was soon winning the game.
I took a lot of his checkers.
Puss thought.
How does he still have so many?
Puss watched the ogre closely. He saw something hidden in the ogre's hand.
More checkers.
Puss thought. He stood up and pointed at the ogre.
Cheater!
The ogre laughed.
Our deal is off.
Puss said.
I'm leaving now.
The ogre stood up.
You're not leaving. It's almost time for lunch.
I'm not staying for lunch.
Puss said.
Yes, you are, cat.
The ogre growled.
Because you are lunch.
The ogre grabbed Puss and threw him into a cage. Puss in Boots, Episode 18, The Ogre Makes a Deal. The ogre carried the cage into the kitchen. He slammed it onto the counter.
Ouch!
Puss said.
Cook!
The ogre yelled for the cook. But no one came. So he began chopping onions himself.
This lunch will be delicious.
He said.
I have to get out of here.
Puss thought. He tried to bend the cage's bars. They were too stiff. Puss had another idea. He pretended to cry.
Oh, poor me. Now I'll never get to live with the princess.
The ogre stopped chopping.
You know the princess?
He asked. Puss sniffed.
My master is going to marry her.
The ogre rubbed his chin.
So, you're going to be rich? Will you pay me if I let you go?
But you're already rich.
Puss said. The ogre shrugged.
I want more money.
Puss pretended to think for a moment. Finally, he said,
It's a deal.
The ogre unlocked the cage door. Puss leaped past the ogre. He grabbed chopped onions. He threw them at the ogre's face.
Ow!
The ogre cried.
My eyes! Ow!
Puss dashed across the counter.
Ow!
He cried.
My paw!
He brushed against a knife. Puss didn't have time to stop. He kept running toward the door. Puss skidded to a stop.
Oh no!
A mean lion blocked the door. Puss in Boots, Episode 19, Chased by a Lion. Roar! The lion pounced at Puss. Puss ran fast.
That lion is really the ogre.
He thought. Puss dashed down a hallway. He looked around.
How do I get out of this castle?
He thought. Puss ran around a corner and saw stairs. The lion snapped his jaws. Chomp!
Yikes!
Puss ran up the stairs. Puss hurried into a small room. Quickly, he slipped out a window and hid. Sniff! Sniff!
I smell you, cat.
The lion said. The lion's big head appeared in the window.
There you are.
The lion said.
Wow!
Puss said.
You're good at changing shapes.
The lion nodded.
Yes, I am. I can change into anything.
Puss rubbed his chin.
I'll bet you can't make yourself bigger.
Of course I can.
The lion yelled.
Watch.
The lion quickly grew bigger. Bam! His head hit the window.
Ouch!
The lion fell backward. Puss peeked into the room. The lion was an ogre again. He was moaning and rubbing his head.
This is my chance to escape!
Puss thought. He slipped back inside through the window. He tiptoed past the ogre. He was almost at the door. A big hand grabbed Puss. The ogre laughed.
Got you.
Puss in Boots, Episode 20, Tricking an Ogre.
I'm going to squash you!
The ogre growled. He squeezed Puss tightly.
Ow!
Puss cried.
Stop, or you won't get my money!
The ogre stopped squeezing.
What do you mean?
He asked. Puss rolled his eyes.
I can't pay you if you squash me.
The ogre thought for a moment. Then he sighed.
I'll put you down now.
The ogre said.
You won't try to escape again, will you?
Puss held a paw over his heart.
Of course not. You can trust me.
The ogre put Puss on the floor.
I'm sorry I tricked you before.
Puss said.
I didn't believe you could make yourself bigger.
Well, I can.
The ogre bragged.
I can do lots of amazing things.
Puss said.
Can you make yourself smaller?
Of course.
The ogre said. Puss gave the ogre a doubtful look.
You don't believe me?
The ogre asked. Puss shrugged.
Not really.
The ogre became angry.
Watch this!
The ogre began to shrink. Soon, he was a mouse.
Oh.
Puss grinned and pounced. Ah! The tiny ogre cried. Please! Gulp! Puss in Boots, Episode 21, Happy Servants. Puss patted his belly. Suddenly, two servants ran into the room.
You got rid of the ogre!
One said.
You are our hero.
The other said. Puss waved a paw.
It was nothing.
He walked out of the room. The servants followed him. Other servants peeked out from doorways.
Is the ogre really gone?
One asked.
Are we safe now?
Yes!
Puss said.
You are all safe.
A young girl stepped forward. Sir? She wiped away a tear. My parents work here, but the ogre put them in the dungeon. Puss went down to the dungeon. It was filled with prisoners. He set everyone free. Everyone cheered for Puss.
How can we ever repay you?
A servant asked.
The king will be here soon.
Puss said.
He will ask who owns this castle. Tell him the Duke of Carrabbas owns it.
We will!
The servant said.
Perfect.
Puss said. He looked at a couple of servants.
Comb your hair and tuck in your shirts.
Soon, the carriage rolled up to the castle.
This is a fine-looking home.
The king said.
I wonder who owns it.
Just then, Fiona's eyes went wide. It's Puss!
Huh?
Carrabbas looked over. Puss stood in front of the castle. He waved.
Welcome home, master.
Puss in Boots, Episode 22, The Duke's Home. Carrabbas ran over to Puss.
What are you doing? We don't live in this castle.
Puss said.
Just pretend that we do.
Carrabbas frowned.
Lying is wrong, Puss.
The king and Fiona walked over.
This is a fine castle, Duke.
The king said.
Actually,
Carrabbas said.
Welcome home, Duke.
Several voices called. Servants stood in the doorway.
come inside.
One said.
Lunch will be ready soon.
The king's eyes lit up.
What a nice surprise! I am rather hungry.
Everyone went in. The king admired the servants.
Everybody looks neat and tidy.
He said.
Let's go to the dining room.
Puss said. Carrabbas started to walk.
Silly Duke.
Puss said.
The dining room is this way.
The king laughed.
This castle is so big, Duke. You forgot where the dining room is.
Puss led everyone down a hallway. Carrabbas and Fiona walked together. You have a lovely home, Duke, Fiona said.
Oh, it's, just a house.
Carrabbas said. Fiona smiled. It's nice that you don't brag. The king whispered to Fiona.
You should marry the Duke. You would be rich.
I don't care about money, Father, Fiona said. I just want to marry a kind man. Puss in Boots, Episode 23, A Kind, Caring Man. A feast was waiting in the dining room. The king sniffed.
The food smells wonderful.
Puss clapped his paws.
Lunch is ready, Your Majesty.
Everyone sat down.
The food looks delicious,
Carrabbas thought.
but I must tell everyone the truth.
Puss handed Carrabbas the bread basket.
Would you like some bread, Master?
Carrabbas gasped.
Puss, your paw is bleeding.
Puss looked at his paw.
Oh, it's not a big deal, Master. I cut myself earlier, but I'm fine.
Carrabbas jumped to his feet and bowed.
Excuse us for a moment, please.
He said. Then he picked up Puss.
You poor thing. Come with me.
Carrabbas carried Puss to a washroom.
Master, this is silly.
Puss said.
I'm fine.
You're hurt.
Carrabbas said. Carrabbas cleaned the wound. A servant brought some bandages. Gently, Carrabbas wrapped the bandage around Puss's paw.
Thank you.
Puss said.
You're a wonderful master.
Carrabbas patted Puss's head.
And you're a wonderful cat.
Soon, Puss and Carrabbas returned. Fiona smiled and turned to her father. "That's what I was talking about, Father," she whispered. "A kind, caring man." Puss in Boots, Episode 24, A Royal Wedding. Fiona and Carrabbas were having a picnic. Puss hunted mice nearby. Fiona played her guitar.
That's a beautiful song.
Carrabbas said. Fiona smiled. "I wrote that song for you."
Fiona, will you marry me?
Carrabbas blurted out. She blushed. "Of course!" Puss's head popped out of a bush. "Hooray!" he whispered. Carrabbas bit his lip.
Fiona, I must tell you something.
Ah! Puss dashed over.
Master!
No, Puss.
Carrabbas held up a hand.
I must tell Fiona the truth. Fiona, I'm not a duke.
Carrabbas said.
I'm actually just a poor man. I understand if you won't marry me now.
Fiona shook her head. "I'm glad you told me. But I don't care if you're rich or poor. Carrabbas, I love you!" Three weeks later, there was a royal wedding. Carrabbas and Fiona were married. Puss wiped away a tear.
I'm so happy for Master!
He thought. Meow! Puss turned around. A cat was looking at him. Her eyes were big and bright. Light sparkled on her whiskers.
Nice boots.
She said.
Hello.
Puss said.
Thank you.
The cat smiled.
Would you like to dance?
Yes!
Puss bowed. Together, they headed for the dance floor.
Little Fox.